What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Microcast. Today's episode is hosted by me, TJ David, and Zoe Rome.
We're going to talk about our Chumbawamba moments from the past week. Then we're going to dive into how we got into running and what advice we give our younger running selves, and get a little bit of the inside intel behind TJ's PR and big win at the Silverton Alpine Marathon.
Yeah, and make sure to stick around till the end. We've got some hot or not topics as well. You won't want to miss those.
Yeah, I want to know what TJ thinks about 200-mile races. It'll be worth it, I promise.
I'm going to make you guys wait for that answer. All right, Chumbawamba moment. We were out at the Hard Rock 100.
That's right. It was actually our third year covering the Hard Rock Endurance Run together. You had an athlete out there running, and I've been covering it for Trail Runner and Outside for 3 years now. And it's a really tough event to cover, right? Like, it's 100 miles in the San Juans. The event itself lasts 48 hours. It is super logistically complicated because you're driving around the mountains. There's limited connectivity. The roads are crazy. The field is spread super far apart. And it's also physically challenging, right? It lasts, like 2 whole days. The men's podium is out there for like a day. The women's podium is out there for a day and a half. And so it's just like really stressful and challenging. And someone that I had hired to help like take photos for Trail Runner ended up not being able to do that. And so I had to like really be flexible, and I had to scramble and kind of problem solve out in the field. And my Chumbawamba moment was hanging around the Muir aid station, just realizing how supported and held I felt by the community. We're all out there at this like weird event. Everyone's being so supportive, supporting their runner, supporting other runners. People are staying awake all night to make quesadillas for friends and family, or for people they'd never met before. And I think Hard Rock is such a poignant encapsulation of what the trail running community is. Like, yeah, it's a weird little kind of like exclusive event, but it also is like a pretty amazing spectator sport. And it is really something that I feel honored to be a part of. And I was just really uplifted by how many folks stepped up to support me when I needed it most.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, so many great photographers out there, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I'd put out kind of just like a little bat signal, like, help, I need a photographer. And like in 12 minutes, my DMs were full of people wanting to help, wanting to provide their services, wanting to collaborate. And I think that that's just so, that is the trail running community in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, it's really indicative of a lot of the people that, comprise.
Yeah.
The bigger community itself. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And just sometimes like I love writing for Trail Runner, but it is a job, and sometimes it's really tough. And that was a tough day. But again, I was so buoyed by how supportive the community was. And that just really reminded me of like my why behind the work. So speaking of work, TJ, what was your Chumbawamba moment for the week?
Yeah. I guess kind of on the work business side, I get to wear a lot of hats as the founder and I don't know, maybe the CEO of Microcosm.
I call him Micro CEO at home.
Yeah, that's funny.
It makes you sound like a tiny CEO. It's really cute.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got, there's 5 coaches that work for me, and soon to be a 6th in a different discipline.
Teaser.
Excited to announce that at some point soon. But it's a lot, I also am coaching full time as well as running the business. And I feel like my job as the head coach, CEO, whatever you want to call it, the founder, is to consistently reevaluate what we're doing and, be willing to make challenging decisions and changes on behalf of our coaches and our athletes. And I'm constantly looking for ways to remove points of friction, barriers to the process. So, the athletes and coaches on our team can just do what they're here to do, which is to train and to facilitate training and to support through coaching.
Right. Like the same sort of like philosophy that underpins our training is infused in our business as well, right? Like work smarter, not harder in all things, right? Like how do we minimize friction? How do we increase touch points and value without increasing our output?
Totally. I mean, we're humans. We can only do so much. And, one of the things that we had been doing for a long time was taking payments through PayPal and Venmo. And I'd looked previously at ways to, I don't know, just implement a more frictionless form of payment, subscriptions or whatever. But it's really difficult because the changes that I make, they impact 5 coaches whose livings and livelihoods depend on the money they make through coaching through the business. Impacts my time substantially as the person who goes through all of the billing and does all the accounting for the business.
And I'm guessing you didn't like get into coaching because you love spreadsheets and you love accounting.
I do that because I love supporting the coaches
Yeah.
and giving them coaching in a box, more or less, like giving them the ability to coach and not have to worry about the other stuff. And then, of course, when you make a decision like this, we have over 200 people who are actively being coached through Microcosm. And when I make a decision, it impacts each person in individual ways too. So every decision, there's a lot that goes into it and a lot of thought. And I just, for a long time have been like, man, having to have people, remind them every month to pay. And, it's just such a pain, and it's a pain for me. It's gotta be a pain for the athletes. And so finally, just we moved over to subscription service, and, of course with that, there's a lot of unintended consequences that come from that. Even if you go through it and you think like, oh, I've got all my ducks in a row here, but, like anything, little things happen, and it's just an interesting process, for me I'm so, like we talked about in the last podcast, my values, I'm all about growth. I'm all about continuing to see where I can make changes that help facilitate.
At the end of the day, you're trying to keep the main thing, and you're trying to support coaches interfacing with athletes more and better, right? Not just us, you're trying to create more efficient systems for everyone.
Yeah. And it takes learning what you've done, looking at what you've done in the past and seeing where, maybe you've made some mistakes or where things, aren't as great as they could have been. And, we're in a huge period of growth and transition at Microcosm. And so, we're asking a lot of our athletes and our coaches to embrace changes, and we will be continuing to do that because there's a lot more points of friction that we could work with. There's a lot more things that we could improve on. Everything is so intentional with what we do, and it's, we don't take any decisions lightly. And so my Chumbawamba moment is it's been 5 years of having payments a certain way, and then asking hundreds of people to change how they've been doing something. And that's, me really stepping into my role and trying to create a system that works for the, the greater whole of the community.
Yeah. And in the beginning, Microcosm coaching was essentially you writing training plans down on Post-it notes and passing them off to friends and coworkers, right? So, change is also a part of our DNA, right? We're always trying to figure out how we can coach better, how we can serve better, how we can connect better. And I'm glad that we're not doing Post-it note based coaching anymore, right? We're always looking for ways to professionalize and skill up. And I think sometimes, not everyone sees the changes that goes on behind the scenes, but yeah, it is all so intentional. And, with growing pains and with change, it's all done with the long game in mind. And what can we do today that will help us better support athletes long term?
Yeah. And you're very good at communicating that. So thanks. That's where, man, your skills just really come into play there. Cause I'm how do I explain all of these thoughts that I have?
Give me a Post-it note. Yeah. Quick.
Well, to be fair, the Post-it notes was a very short stint. That was really early on.
But that's your your Steve Wozniak garage story. That's our startup story.
The humble beginnings of Microcosm.
Yeah. TJ wearing a cute little sushi chef outfit, passing around Post-it notes with aerobic based training on them.
Okay. Just for full disclosure, I am not a sushi chef, but I
But you
was
had a
a
cute little,
server.
right. But you had a cute little uniform.
I wore an apron.
Yes. It was cute.
Oh my gosh, how far we've come. Well, I'm excited for what's coming down the line in Microcosm 3.0, which I'm kind of calling the next iteration of what we're doing and new tiers of service. And we're really calling all of our athletes forward and our coaches to just embrace a higher level of service.
Yeah. And like, I think, so often I think about how amazing the process of adaptation is in all things, right? Like our bodies and brains are so adaptable. And I think that learning from that and implementing that in other areas of our lives and recognizing that, right? Like we're beings that are made to change. The only reason that training works is because that we've evolved over thousands and thousands of years to be hyper adaptable beings. And I think that like when I am scared to embrace change, that's something that I lean on that really helps me.
Yeah. And, something I was thinking about in the context of this is, being a small business owner. I love being a coach, but this is how I make 100% of my living now. And so, making the business into an actual business where we can make an income and a living, is obviously a top priority. And of course, going back to what you mentioned before, we don't want to stray too far from our roots because, the coaching and the quality of service and the touch points and the attention to detail and the human first approach of Microcosm is something that, really resonates with a lot of athletes. But something that I love and I've cultivated through, being an athlete is flexibility. And to be a successful CEO, to be the founder of a successful business, flexibility is paramount. Like being able to make those changes and not get hung up on all of the little things that can happen after you implement the change or before, and all, you're inevitably someone's going to get let down, and like that's always unfortunate. But like it's all about flexibility and being able to continually adapt. What I'm talking about now with Microcosm, I guarantee will be different in 5 years from now.
Right, as it should be, right? Like, because you have to always be able to look at what you're doing in work and your personal life and training and assess, like, is this working? And then figuring out, like, okay, if I've identified this as not working, like, I've got to be willing to change it. Like, just because you've always done something one way, that is not a good reason to continue to do it. And I think like always assessing like these vestigial systems that we've like inherited just because like that was how we used to do things, or like that was easier, that was cheaper back in the day, assessing like, does this actually serve us now, and what can we do better now that we know what we know?
Yeah, serve us, serve our community.
Totally.
It's super important. I love to put the athletic lens on that because, and thinking about like, what am I into this week? Oh, thinking about Silverton Alpine Marathon and Hard Rock and like our athlete Tom, who had an amazing race there, like the amount of flexibility and the ability to adapt in the moment. Those are skills that we cultivate in a microcosm through running,
right?
And then get to take out into the world and the other things that we're doing. And that's, again, why athletics is so special, such an important part of my life. I wear a lot of different hats. One hat is, being an athlete, an elite athlete. Another hat is being, the CEO of a business and in a coaching organization. The other is being a coach. There's many different hats that make up all of those things. But like, you can take pieces of your identity and things that you've cultivated in one area and then apply them in many other ways. And as I was making this decision and finally like pulled the trigger on like, okay, we're switching it this month, not next month, not over 3 months. We're doing it now. This is for the greater good. This is for, in service of everybody. And like, I was just thinking flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
like it's the same thing, when you're running a race and something, you encounter something that's unknown and you're on your toes and you're thinking about how do you adapt, you make the decision, then you move forward.
Yeah. And until Bowie's OnlyFans takes off, we're 100% committed to the coaching.
All right, what are you into this week, Zoe?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a song that Spotify recommended to me. I have no idea why. It doesn't seem like something I would normally listen to, but I'm kind of obsessed with it. I put it on my running playlist like 8 times. I always cue it up when I'm going to do a workout because I just find it so. I just really resonate with the lyrics. And it's like kind of a rap song. I'm not going to rap it, even though I am wearing like my backwards rapper style hat. But I'm going to just try to just read the lyrics. It's from the song Hope by NF. What's my definition of success? It's listening to what your heart says, standing up for what you know is right, while everyone else is tucking their tail between their legs. What's my definition of success? Creating something that no one else can. Being brave enough to dream big, grinding when you're told to just quit, giving more when you've got nothing left. It's a person that'll take a chance on something that they were told could never happen. It's a person that can see the bright side through the dark times when there ain't one. It's someone who ain't ever had nothing, ain't afraid to walk away from profit because they'd rather do something that they really love and take the pay cut. It's a person that would never waver or change who they are just to try to gain some credibility so that they could feel accepted by a stranger. It's a person that can take the failures in their life and turn them into motivation. It's believing in yourself when no one else does. It's amazing.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that so good?
Man, I definitely
Feeling it?
feel stuff.
Yeah, no, me too. I feel like particularly like the definition of success is creating something that no one else can really like that hit me, man. And like I mean every part of this like bridge of the song I feel like really gets me. Like I feel like I have been and hope to be like the embodiment of so many different parts of this, right? Like being brave enough to dream big, grinding when you're told to just quit. Someone who's like not afraid to take a pay cut so they can do what they really love. Like both of us have done that time and time again in our careers. And it's the only reason that we've gotten to where we are and that we have the success that we have is because there was a day not too long ago where you and I were like, no, I don't think I want to be a waiter. I think I want to start a coaching business. And for me, it was like, no, I think I want to be a writer. I want to be a coach. I want to do these things. And I'll walk away from financial security to make that happen because I believe that I can do something that no one else can. Like I believe that I'm here for a reason and it's to make something that I am the only person who can make it. And I really love the idea that like being successful is standing up for what you believe when other people are scared too. That really resonates with me. So that song is Hope by NF. I would just encourage everyone to look it up. I think it's a really fun song to run to. I love it for strides, love it for intervals, love it when I just need to get hyped before a race.
I feel like that song just described the last week of my life.
Yeah.
Wow, I have no idea who NF is, and
me neither. And I haven't looked up any of their other songs.
They've got some wisdom in this for sure, and I think. Yeah, I would just invite anybody who's listening to, maybe pause, rewind, listen again, reflect. I bet you there are aspects of this that they see mirroring back parts of themselves as well. And that's actually pretty powerful.
Yeah. I feel like so often I'm asked to define success and I give kind of like mealy-mouthed answers, but like I heard this and I immediately was like, no, that's my definition, right? Like my definition of success is listening to what my heart says, standing up for what I know is right, and striving to make something that no one else can.
Mm. Yeah, I've always kind of had close to my heart the definition of success is how many people you can positively impact. And I had not. This just really expanded my view on that a lot. It's pretty awesome.
Sometimes when I'm doing strength training, I'll just listen to this on repeat and like get hella hyped.
Yeah, man, I feel like it's been a particularly. It's only Tuesday, but if we count last week, is a particularly challenging coaching week. And I would just love to invite any of my athletes who are going through a struggle or a challenge to think about this before giving up.
Yeah. Be that person who'll take a chance on something they were told could never happen.
Yeah.
I feel like I've done that 100 times in my life, you know, like I was told like so often when I was studying being a writer in college, everyone was like, well, what are you actually going to do when you grow up? And I was like, no, I'm legit going to make the majority of my income from writing. I'm going to be a writer. And you're fucking wrong if you think that that's not going to happen. Like, I'd never doubted it, you know? And I feel like now I'm living that out, right? Like, I was always told as a younger athlete that I wasn't good enough. Like, I was always on the bench. I always won the team spirit award. I would still win that award also. But like, I'm still out here grinding, stacking bricks, trying to like compete at the, at the international level. Like, I'm standing on international podiums after I didn't make my junior high cross country team.
Totally. And so it really goes back to the stories we tell ourselves. Are you the athlete who's not good enough to get off the bench, or are you that game-changing athlete who competes for international podiums? Just you get to decide who you want to be.
Well, I'd say I'm both.
I disagree. I think that the athlete on the bench is an old story, and the athlete who's competing for podiums is a new identity and way of being.
Yeah. But yeah, everyone, I would just, put the song on your race playlist, put it on your wake up playlist. It's a good one.
All right.
But, I'm excited to hear about your race at the Silverton Alpine Marathon. So you've done this race before, and I'm just going to give our listeners a little insider intel that we woke up super early, staying in Silverton. TJ's out there doing his little warm-up around the parking lot. I'm huddled in the car trying to keep warm, so I had neglected to bring a puffy coat to the actual Rocky Mountains. And TJ comes back to the car after doing his warm-up. There are like 90 seconds on the clock until the gun goes off. He just looks at me and said, I'm not feeling it. I don't know. I am not feeling it. I'm super in my head. Then he just jogs off to the start line. And that was the last I saw of you.
Yeah.
So fill us in on what happened
I don't know.
Meantime.
I don't know. Crazy stuff happened to me out there. I think it was a big week of work. And, like I mentioned, we're going through a lot of really important and exciting changes at Microcosm. And as the business owner, the founder, the CEO, a lot of my focus and attention has quite honestly been on that over the last couple months. I've been working really hard with, my executive coach on kind of like paving this new path forward for our business, in service of all of our athletes and the athletes, who have yet to be impacted by our services and what we do. And I'm just so excited about everything that's coming, but it is requiring a lot of work. And I remember, Friday was like, I worked from 7:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night. We were designing a, marketing plan and feedback for.
We have this terrible habit of anytime we're in the car for more than 20 minutes together, it turns into like a vision session for Microcosm, because we just get so excited and there's so much energy around the coaching right now that whenever you get the both of us in a room and the microphone's not on, it really does turn into a powerful vision session. But, we have to sometimes be really diligent and disciplined that it doesn't like take over our personal lives and it doesn't like dominate every dinner table conversation.
Totally. But I guess, man.
But it does come from a place of stoke.
Yeah. And we're like, and super excited about it. Right. Like, but that is work, especially mental work. And it, I think because of all of that, and we have limited time, you're, running a magazine. I'm coaching 3 magazines, I guess. I'm coaching a lot of people. That's, my primary source of income is through that. And so, our day to day, we don't always have time to zoom out, talk strategy, get to the finer things about the business that, people who aren't a coach and a CEO at the same time, they'd just be one role. They would have time to do that.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of these sessions happened in the security line at DIA one time. And the gal in front of us just turned around with us. She's like, that sounds real hard, y'all.
But she also said, I think you guys really know what you're talking about.
She's like, it sounds like you guys really know what you're talking about.
So that was good, great feedback. Not that I, need the external validation, but thank you. And maybe a future listener. But yeah, like, so I guess mentally, I was still kind of like not feeling like, it was time to race. Like I hadn't had the time to prepare. I hadn't done a mental taper. I had just come off a really big training week, like really, really big. And I remember, we were actually recapped it on here. I was like, oh, what's your Chumbawamba moment? And I was like, man, just like keeping 2 feet on the ground this week and feeling like I have some semblance of balance was my Chumbawamba the week before. And like, I think it's maybe that benefited me in hindsight, that I was really focused on other things, like literally up until the moment that gun went off and the race began. I felt like my time and attention needed to be on cultivating next steps for Microcosm and continuing to perpetuate forward all of the amazing momentum that I've got going on, behind the scenes and with my executive coach and like all this really cool, exciting stuff. But in like mentally, I almost had psyched myself out before going to the start line. But I always tell myself right before a race, in like the 3 to 5 seconds before the race starts and they're doing the countdown, I always tell myself, this is the moment to let all self-limiting doubts go. I always tell myself that before every race. I have for years. And I think that subtle reminder brought me back kind of into the present moment instead of thinking about the future and how in the past and, what we were doing well and what, we needed to work on. And my goal coming into this race was really to try to embody the champion's mindset as much as I could. And this is...
So can you break down the champion's mindset for us non-champions?
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'll break it down again. We did talk about this on the last pod.
Okay, right.
But wrote a great newsletter on it as well, for our athletes. Community members only, but something to look forward to for any prospective athletes out there listening. The champion's mindset really is the ability to let go of fear of not achieving the outcome you want. So you can ride kind of the edge of what you're capable of the entire time. It's like having no fear of losing, and that ability to let that go brings out the best possible qualities in yourself in the race.
It's like letting go of fear so that you're free to perform.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, and I knew that I wanted to race hard. That was the objective. Race hard at elevation, get a grasp on where I'm at with acclimating and being prepared for, racing at the Leadville 100, which is up high. Silverton is also up very high. And just put myself in that position to really ride that thin line between like too much and like I'm going to blow up.
Yeah.
And I guess
like you were getting fully Cindy with it.
I did, yeah. And that's not normal for me. And I had, thanks to our buddy Sean Van Horn, he had texted me the night before to remind me that a Prefontaine quote that the best pace is a suicide pace, and today is a good day to die.
So in the running world, there are mantras, and then there are shantras, and that's a shantra.
That's a shantra. But I was thinking about that because it kind of like I didn't tell Sean, I was going to try to race hard or differently than I normally race, and I tend to be a conservative racer, not putting myself out there until usually the second half of a race, and then that's when I usually push and empty the tank. And I wanted to do this at the UTMB Argentina, but because a few logistical things went wrong, I wasn't able to kind of start at that suicide pace, which, to be fair, is for anyone who knows me, probably that seems like a really weird mantra for me, because like it's super extreme and I'm not like that kind of person.
Right. Well, sometimes though, I mean, that's one of the things I love about racing is I get to embody a different personality than like Zoe at work or like Coach Zoe. And I always think about how even Beyonce has her Sasha Fierce identity, right? Like she has her like on stage, like even fiercer identity. Like Megan the Stallion, when she wants to get like super swifty in a rap song, she becomes Tina Snow. So like in order to perform, a lot of really high end performers like actually have like a second identity that they espouse. So like I always think about being Sasha Fierce when I race, right? And it's not like just Zoe, it's like a different performance of that identity.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
that's
you were just being Sasha Fierce out there.
yeah, sure. I like it. That's fine. I was being Sasha out there.
It's Mrs. Fierce to you.
Mrs. Fierce, very fierce. Uh, uh, yeah, it was just, I started hard. I don't know how, I can't really explain it. I just kind of let go of the things that I was thinking about and just was very present in the race.
One of the nice things about running hard is that it's very challenging to think about work when you're just like trying to breathe.
Yeah. And, being up at altitude, you can hit your limit really quick.
Really efficiently.
And it was nice. There was a guy who stuck with me. We kind of traded on and off for, I don't know, maybe the first 16 miles or so. And there was a nice collaboration happening. And, when that self-doubt crept in, I have plenty of little cues and reminders I use, but I kind of just kept sticking to that mantra that, this is how it's supposed to feel because you're running a suicide pace. And if you blow up, who gives a shit? Like, it doesn't matter. It's just a race. Like, the outcome, whatever it is, isn't going to change me. It's the journey that changes me. And so I'm all in to to like really see where that edge was. And I followed it the whole race.
Yeah.
I eventually dropped that guy kind of like at maybe the last quarter mile of the climb to the high point of the race. And I knew, my goal was to really feel like I had no climbing legs left at that high point. And then you get to that high point and you're up at like 13,000 feet. And I distinctly remember I felt a lot better this time than the last time I ran the race.
Nice.
I had made some changes, to my hydration strategy and things like that.
A lot more electrolytes.
Yeah, a lot more fluids, especially being up high. And then, some of those things creep in, like, ooh, I wonder if this is like how far I can push my legs. But then there's another little small climb, and I was able to run that whole climb, and I felt really strong. And then, once I get to a downhill, that's where my strengths really kick in. And
downhill athlete.
Downhill athlete. I gotta say, like, taking it back to our first pod, in the last 6 miles of the race are kind of grueling. It's really a rolling road, pretty sunny and hot, and you don't have like the gravity isn't really helping you as much. You don't have like as much of those free miles.
Yeah.
And, up that high,
many miles are very free.
You're feeling a little more like aerobically limited. And I was trying to like click off miles under 7 minutes. And it definitely, I was like really having to focus to do that. And I got to the last aid station there, and that's when I really realized like the guy who was trailing me in second was like nowhere to be seen. And I was like, all right, that's great. Like, it looks, this is looking pretty good. And I started to kind of get out of that mindset, that mode that I was in, that suicide mode. And I was like, oh, I think I'm probably going to win this race. And then I had this immediate reminder of, from the Matthew McConaughey book that I mentioned in the first pod that I had read a couple months ago, where he was like, a lot of people choke because they get wrapped up in like having already seeing themselves like complete the challenge or the objective, and they stop doing it. And they get out of that present moment. And it was like a really strong reminder there to myself to just like not ease off the gas. And I kind of doubled down on the gas pedal like as much as I could. And I really, I was like right on the line between like any faster, I'm going to just throw up. Any slower, I feel like I'll be too much on the brakes. And it worked out. It was a really different way of racing for me. I think I haven't really raced that free since 2018, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, it'd been a long time.
Y'all, he did this race so fast that he finished this marathon before I finished my 16-mile long run that turned into a mountain vision quest. But I had like kind of timed it where I thought I was going to finish my long run at the same time and in the same place as TJ. And I rolled up to the finish line like how long after you were done?
It was a while.
He was like 2 hot dogs deep by the time I was done.
I definitely had 2 vegan hot dogs already.
Yeah. 2 pieces of tube meat deep before I even finished. So I don't know. It's always fun to see your partner, get a big win and celebrate with vegan hot dogs.
Yeah, and for me,
he had a total of 3 hot dogs at the finish line, maybe 4.
Yeah. And I got the protein going. Solid recovery. Ran 100+ mile week last week. It's going. Everything's
It's game time.
It's game time for Leadville. But yeah, I guess maybe just just recapping things. The champion's mindset, trying to embody that mode in racing. It's something that I want to carry forward into the unknown of the 100-mile distance, even if I blow up. Of course, like the goal is to finish and to respect the distance, but also to, visualize the best possible outcome and accept and work towards that best possible outcome. Which would, me winning the race or having a podium, I don't know, pushing my potential or being on that edge for as long as possible. That all kind of is like within that vision. And just feels really good to think about, rather than, it's all about dreaming big.
Right.
And not holding yourself back with small vision syndrome or self
dreaming big and doing big, right? Like if you're going to have big dreams, you got to show up every fucking day to like do something to get a little bit closer to that big goal.
Yeah. And it just goes back to growth, learning, values, culture of excellence, champion's mindset.
Yeah. I love that.
Cool. All right. Let's not talk about me for a minute. It's too uncomfortable.
I'm winded.
I need a sip of NA beer.
Yeah, we're over here, by the way. It's Tuesday. Tuesday, booze day over here. Tuesday, No booze day. None of our days are booze days anymore. But we're chugging some groovy, GRUVI, juicy NA IPAs.
They're great.
It's a fun Tuesday afternoon. Just sipping NA beers and chatting.
Feel a little buzzed. Probably from the conversation. Very stimulating. All right. The meat. I like how you call the body of our conversations the meat.
I know. I've been thinking of switching it to the seitan or the tofu. The textured vegetable protein.
Ooh.
This is the textured vegetable protein of our conversation.
The seitan wings. So how did you get into running?
Yeah. So I got into running in college. I just kind of started jogging. I had played volleyball in high school and was like not a great athlete, but wanted to stay fit. So started jogging, like used like an old ass Casio watch just to like time my like 45 minute runs. And then eventually I needed a job and I got hired by none other than Coach Drew Connor at Rush Running. And it was really Coach Drew who set me on my running path because I really wanted to be more consistent in my running. So I like made a deal with Drew that like every morning we would meet at the park at like 6 or 7 a.m. We would run 5 to 8 miles together. And we did that for like 3 years every day. And like Drew was my boss. So like I was scared as shit to let him down. Like when you're the newest employee somewhere, like you are not, and you tell your boss you're going to be somewhere every morning, like you are not going to miss a day. So like I kind of use that as like a commitment tool and a commitment mechanism to keep myself committed to the running. So that was how I got into running, was just like it started as something I wanted to do so I could be a better employee at this running store. And then it became my way to just like hang out with Coach Drew, one of my favorite people and best friends every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Coach Drew.
So I blame Coach Drew.
He is like at the epicenter of so many people's running journeys.
He like is so many people's running origin story.
Yeah. Oh man, you guys don't know Coach Drew. You gotta meet him.
I know, he's Dr. Frankenstein and I'm the monster.
All right,
How
all
did
right.
how did you get into running?
I've been in and out of running probably since like senior year of high school. I never ran cross country, or I did a little track in middle school. I was actually a tennis player in college. Played Division III college tennis on a great nationally ranked team, and had a couple trips to the NCAA's, and it was super fun. But as a part of our training, we did a lot of running,
Yeah.
especially in college. That's probably when I really started venturing to the trails. Our coach was just a big proponent of it. We actually did snowshoe
Oh
racing.
my God, that sounds miserable.
It
As a
was
southerner, I just can't. I can't even with the snowshoe racing.
it was awful. It was not fun. Like, we ran to build aerobic fitness. But tennis is a really it's not really like, it is an aerobic sport, but you need to go as hard as you can in 30 seconds and then recover in 30 seconds
Mm.
over and over again for several hours. So it's like having an aerobic base is important, but like being a good runner who can run like 8-minute miles for a 5K or something like that wasn't like part of the
Yeah.
program. That's like not how athletes train. That's would be way too different from like what actually the movement patterns and what you need to be able to do on a tennis court, in terms of being able to like go as hard as you can, maybe even like almost anaerobic, and then recover very, very quickly. But we used that. We trained on the track. We all had to run uh, faster than a 5:30 mile to make the
Yeah.
team. And then we got tested in the half mile, the 400, like everything
Yeah.
twice a year. Um, so we needed to like to run a little bit in order to be able to, like, you can't just like off the couch 5:30 mile.
No, 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 don't do that. You'll destroy a hamstring.
Yeah, and we hit the trails. There are actually a lot of trails where I went to school. We would run those until basically ski season, and then I would ski all winter. And anybody who knows my
Nice.
origin stories knows that I'm a big skier. But that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the foundation. It was
Yeah.
through other sports.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I was running in Arkansas, running with Coach Drew, and then I moved out to Boulder, Colorado to go to graduate school, which is an amazing place to move if you're really excited to get very into running. And I had run a couple ultras in college. I did 250Ks and was really curious to do 50 milers and such when I was out in Colorado, because that's what everyone was doing. And I just was like, yeah, I better go longer. And, I was just like self-coached at this time because I was in grad school and had like no money and like was, 23 at the time, which is not a great like decision-making age. And so I did the Dead Horse 50 miler out in Utah and just had like the longest day. Like I was out there for so long, my watch died. I had no idea where I was. Like, cannot recommend enough doing race specific training. But it was also like I loved it. Like, man, I loved being out there for long days. I was working as a backpacking guide throughout college, so like I was like a total like slog lord. I could just be out there like all freaking day eating goldfish if I wanted to. But eventually got curious about going longer, signed up for the Leadville 100, DNF'd Leadville, ended up just meeting David Roche at a podcast recording like a week after my DNF and was like, please take me. I need help. I'm not doing this right. But I think I could be good if I did it right. And yeah, and we had actually, this was like right around the time we met. We were running together. I frequently made the joke that I was derailing your training plan. I think there was maybe a month there where the training was set aside for Zoe time a little bit, a couple times.
Yeah.
A couple Saturdays.
There was a few moments where David was like, you got to do some of your long runs solo because Zoe's not, quite there yet, and we don't want anyone to get
I was
injured.
also like very into like running 14ers, which not great training.
Yeah. Well, you live and you learn.
Exactly.
Growth.
Growth.
Yeah. Growth and learning.
Yeah. I also remember when I first started running, when I finally got like a fancy Garmin watch that did like heart rate. And again, I had like no idea what I was doing. So I would use the watch and I would try to run for as long as I could at max heart rate, which is not very long because that is literally how max heart rate works. So I would like max out, I would stop, I would get frustrated at myself that I couldn't maintain my maximum heart rate for longer. And that's just like how I would run. I would just be like running around Aspen, just like going as hard as I possibly could, like looking at my watch. It's like truly a wonder I didn't damage myself permanently with like how completely stupid my training was.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like what training mistakes did you make early on in your running?
I didn't make a lot of training mistakes early on.
Oh
in my
boy,
running.
all right.
I think it was midway through when I started to make a lot of mistakes.
That's even more interesting.
Fairly quick study on the methodology, and it was over 12 years ago at this point, 10 years ago since I ran my first ultra, when I started really diving into, how to build aerobic base. And the lens I was, diving into this through was through ski mountaineering, and really wanting to support building the aerobic engine so I could do the 12-hour ski mountaineering days and feel stronger and more equipped and keep up with, partners who I felt like were fitter than me. And so, my mentality was always like, just go really easy, hike the hills, run the downs, listen to your breath, conversational effort. I actually didn't do a whole lot of interval work or anything like that. So, maybe training mistakes then was like not doing enough speed. But I think like as I got better, and then, there's kind of like that U-shaped curve that David always talks about in training, where like athletes, as they get better and they start to do some more high-end work, they start to like fill in the rest of that spectrum and balance out their training with more Z3 work and some zone 4, all of a sudden, economy starts to kick in, you get faster, and it's easier to run harder on easy days. And I think there was like a time period for me of about, 18 months or so, where I was probably overcooking a lot of my easy days. And like, I like look at my training a lot now, because I'm like, oh yeah, back then, like there's no way I was running like this. And I was like, oh wow, like I still was really fast back then. But like that was definitely like a lot more impact, a lot harder for me to run those paces then, as opposed to now, I've taken just like a lot off of a lot of my easy days. So when I do have the days like at Silverton, like they're really reflective of my training, like that 8:08 pace or something for a marathon above 10,000 feet with 4,000 feet of climbing. That's pretty fast, but I've been running similar to that in training, and sometimes just a little bit easier than that, and finishing knowing I could do more. And then all of a sudden, you're right there and you can do more.
Yeah.
But a lot of athletes just have that tendency. They're just really, and obviously I just mentioned it, I did this too. It's just, you get to that place and you're running your easy days way too fast.
Yeah.
Not checking in with yourself, not, doing the talk test,
right.
Not listening to your breathing. It's just too much on your legs, too much on your joints, too much impact force. And you're undermining aerobic development.
Totally.
So
yeah, like I came in what we call a gray zone athlete, someone who like is running too hard, but also doesn't have like a very high upper end because they've never really been able to like get out of that gray zone work to develop the like top end economy. And it took a lot of it took me slowing down to see any progress at all early on. But as soon as I slowed down, I was like, oh my God, like running is so great when you just don't hammer yourself every time you put shoes on. Like this is so much more fun when it doesn't just like hurt and feel shitty.
Yeah. What other advice would you give your younger self if you could?
Yeah, hire a coach sooner. I would also say, like, I definitely, when I was a younger athlete, like struggled with exercise dependency. I struggled with rest. And, I wish I had like addressed that earlier on, because I think I had some like unhealthy habits around exercise when I first started. And I would tell myself to develop healthier coping mechanisms outside of sport, develop a healthier like identity outside of sport, develop other ways of connecting with other people that don't have anything to do with sport, so that you can really, really rest. Like I used to ski on my rest days, and that meant I wasn't really resting. And I'm actually a reframe that I make in my own training is, instead of calling them rest days, I call them adaptation days, because that's when the adaptations actually happen. So if you don't take your adaptation day and you ski instead, you're missing out on those adaptations. So I think I kind of like undermined some of my earlier development because I was just trying to do too much all the time. And when I finally embraced rest days as like a full rest day, I saw like immediate improvement in my running, and I was able to add on much more volume. I felt mentally way fresher, and like, yeah, I missed some powder days, but my running just felt so much better. And I feel like there's just been like a few times in my running career, like when I just figure something out, it just feels so obvious, right? Like, okay, don't run at maximum heart rate. Like, oh my God, running feels so great. Do rest. Oh my God, when I do this, it feels amazing. Another kind of like big thing that took me a while to figure out was like the supercharged fueling for races and long runs. I used to do like 200 calories an hour and I felt like fine. And then when I jumped to 300 and then 400 calories an hour, I had this epiphany of like, oh shit, like running long doesn't have to feel that hard. Like it just felt like a whole new level of fitness had been opened up for me just by like adding in a couple extra gels and some like Coke when I was racing, and really getting up around that 400 calorie an hour, and even over in a few instances. I was like, oh my God, why did no one tell me long runs could feel this easy? Why did no one tell me running 50 miles could feel this good? And you could like literally race across the finish line when you just fuel like a boss. And I feel like those are the three things that for me opened up like a whole new world of athletic possibility.
Yeah, I definitely can relate on the fueling side. Not that it was under fueling the calorie part, but not taking in enough hydration or electrolytes really plagued me in my performance. And it was like almost like this epiphany moment when I got my level and sweat test done and realized like, okay, like I really needed a lot more sodium and a little bit more fluids. And I was like pretty close. But like when you're performing at a high level, like being pretty close just isn't good enough.
Yeah, the margin for error when you're really efforting is so much smaller.
It really is. And like all the side spurs and the issues that, we've talked about on earlier podcasts have like really, it's awesome to think about and reflect on, because it was really holding me back. But I've kind of put those behind me at this point as a result of getting the fueling taken care of. And there was always all that influence back in the day when I Killian and not eating a lot and not drinking, and all of these different
the hard boys out
and all that stuff was like really prevalent when I first got into the sport. And so you have to work through and be able to just change your perspective on that. Like, oh yeah, you're like, just because you need to hydrate more, fuel more, doesn't mean like you're not a great athlete.
Totally. Yeah. I used to feel really self-conscious, especially when I would run with other women. I was like, man, I'm taking in so much more fuel than them. But then like at the end of runs, they'd be dragging ass and I'd be like, okay, this is why we eat, you guys. Like, to stay out here longer.
And then for the recovery.
I mean, you feel so much better. Jeez Louise. It's just like a night and day of difference. I think like a lot of these mistakes are just so common and like easy to make, right? Like when we're newer runners. I'm curious how this informs your coaching.
Yeah. I mean, it's like so much so, right? Like as soon as I have an athlete going over 90 minutes, they get, material and information on how to begin to fuel those runs and inform themselves. And especially if athletes actually talk about feeling hungry on runs or intuitively feel like they're heavier sweaters, I'll give them that information sooner, because there's no hard and fast rule that like you can't fuel runs that are longer than 90 minutes. It's just like glycogen's depleted sufficient enough after 90 minutes that you need to start replenishing if you're going to stay out there long enough. And it's different for every athlete. And so knowing your body And again, that's like why the feedback process. And if you're an athlete who doesn't, at least reflect on their own training and their own training log, like you're missing out on building vital self-awareness about how your body works. And those insights over years can have a huge impact on your success and whether or not you accomplish your A races or not, whether you accomplish your goals or not. Those things we start early in the process with athletes and have the resources available because they are really important. Also, we've kind of like, we know from experience, like those are common mistakes people make. And so as coaches, our job is to try to intervene when we can and guide people gently away from those same pitfalls.
Yeah, for sure. I think from my perspective, like a lot of the reasons I was making really flawed decisions early on in my training was like from a place of fear and insecurity. So I always really try to tune into like what might be motivating athletes, maybe misunderstandings or maybe motivating them to not rest hard enough, to not fuel enough, to not take their easy days easy. Because like I ran my easy days hard because I just like couldn't understand and I didn't believe. And I thought that like my edge, like what gave me an edge in the sport was I just went really, really hard. And it like, because training takes a while, you have to put so much trust in your coach to be like, all right, I guess we'll just run easy for 3 months and see what happens. Right. Cause like that's the type of scale that it takes to see any improvement, not even significant improvement, which takes like years, honestly. So I always just really try to like make that connection with the athlete and see like, hey, like, where's this coming from? Like, what belief are you maybe holding onto that's causing you to say, I don't deserve rest, or like, I don't deserve fuel, or like, what's motivating these decisions? And how can we start to dismantle that narrative so that you can really, really connect to the right training for your body?
Yeah. And that's so important because we're all often holding on to those stories and focusing on things that support them. For example, if you're struggling with your fueling, but your greatest influences are Killian and Anton, and you're like, wow, those guys never needed to fuel and they have all the FKTs and the fastest times. And so like, if I'm great, like to be great, I have to fuel that way. And a sign, a guidepost in that process of becoming great is doing that. You're upholding stories that might not be healthy for you. And of course, when it's around fueling and you're not fueling at least 300 calories an hour, there's all sorts of research out there that suggests you're inhibiting access to your potential. So wherever we can find those stories or those narratives, and again, it takes time really building the coach athlete relationship over many months and years, ideally years. I know, my coach, we've been working together for 5 years, and that relationship, you can't put a dollar amount on how important that is, because every time I think that I've figured something out or I'm onto something, I, have somebody there who's got like that 30,000 foot view as well. And totally. It's so helpful.
Yeah. And it's just so much trust of like knowing that like, okay, am I like, when I do have a narrative that's getting in the way between me and making the best training decision, like that is why I hired that coach to call me out on my bullshit, to hold me accountable to my potential, and like to have someone who's willing to have hard conversations with me and say like, hey, like, let's right the ship here. Like, let's do something different. Let's change our approach. Why are you holding yourself back in this way? And I just am so grateful for that. And I think that that's one of the biggest investments a beginner runner could make, right? Like, cause and even I think that like so often, like the beginners who just like spend all their time reading shit on the internet are going to pick up the weirdest and most random toxic shit out there ever. So if you're a beginner, you work with us, you don't work with us. If you do work with us, pat yourself on the back for making a fabulous investment. But I think it's just so important to have that person who has made the mistakes themselves and can like help you avoid those same traps and pitfalls.
100%.
And like, man, I wish I had a coach like back in 2013 or 14 when I started running.
Yeah. It really pays to have a coach who has been involved in the process in their own way, because they're going to know more.
Oh, I also wore zero drop shoes. I feel like that's up there.
Oof.
Because they looked cute because they were purple.
We can do another podcast
on zero drop shoes.
Yeah, at some point. Let's get into some hot or not.
Hot or not. All right. Ooh, I want to hear your answer on this one, TJ. Shorty shorts.
How short are we talking?
Short.
Like
Short.
5-inch inseam?
I don't know numbers. Short.
I'm into short shorts.
Yeah, me too.
Rock them if you got them.
Yeah. I like it. I love that. Like, I love having my big old whole leg out there. It makes me feel like really sporty.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, but also a fan of the short knees.
Yeah.
So
Whatever you got.
whatever
you like.
whatever inseam you feel comfortable in, I love for you.
All right. Body
But
glide.
also I like short.
Body glide.
Ooh.
Hot or not?
So hot.
Super hot. Couldn't run without it.
No, same. I used to like have like a weird thing where I was like, is chafing bad? Does it mean like my body's bad or wrong? And I used to just like not use it because I felt like admitting that like my body rubbed, and it just took me years and years to be like, yeah, fuck it. Like my body rubs. Like that's fine. That's normal. Like I'm trail running. Stuff's going to rub. Stuff's going to jiggle. You might as well get swifty with it and make it nice and loose and slippery.
All right. Aid station quesadillas.
I like it in theory, but in practice, I'm a no-go captain.
Yeah, I don't know about those quesadillas. Gosh, maybe
It's a
I'm
big
gonna
risk.
I'll ask Tom Ralph after the Hard Rock
Yeah.
100 if he had any quesadillas out there.
I feel like if I was doing hard rock, I would have a quesadilla.
Yeah, maybe in a race that long.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Sweaty hugs.
love a sweaty hug.
Hot.
Hot. So hot.
Okay. If we're both sweaty, I'm fine with it. It's hot.
Yeah.
But if someone's sweaty and I'm not, like if I'm wearing, Sunday's best and you're just finished your long run,
Not hot.
no, it's a little.
TJ is
a little too
pretty
much.
sweated verse. You don't like being sticky.
I hate it.
We literally had to buy a portable shower for when we do like trips out in the woods because he just like can't not be showered.
It's nice. You can sleep. You feel clean. You're ready to go. You're fresh in the morning.
I'm just a
hit up
dirt.
that
Like
next
I don't mind
long
being
run.
gross and just wallowing in my own filth.
You do not. It's very strange. Oh man. All right. Races with really generous cutoff times. Hot or not?
Hot. I think it's a great way to get more people into the sport. I'm all in. I think it's awesome. I want to see more generous cutoff times.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's no, unless I don't know, like it's dangerous.
I mean, I get it,
something.
like, because like you're keeping volunteers out there or even staff, so like I understand logistically why it's challenging, but I would like to see, and like I know we have like a lot of race directors on our team, so shout out to the amazing RDs. But I think that like something that I would love to see for improving access and equity is more generous cutoff times.
All right. How about 200 milers? Hot or not?
I'm gonna say no. I'm just not into it, man. Like it takes me so. I'm a no on this.
I'm a no. I'm a not hot for
Not hot.
myself. For
Yeah,
myself.
if other people want to do it, that's fine. But like, that's a long ass way, man.
If you are one of my athletes and that is one of your dream goals, I will support you.
Yeah,
100%.
whatever sparks, whatever flips your skirt. But I'm not. I can't do it. It's just like that's days. That's days of your life.
Some people like that.
I know. I'm just good on them. So I'm gonna say not for me, hot for you.
Yeah. Whatever you like.
Yeah.
That's what we're into.
Whatever you like. That's a good quesadilla distance.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. As usual, if you have any feedback, a question for a future call, if you're looking for support in your running journey, please visit us on the web at microcosm-coaching.com or contact us at gmail.com.